And we are live for episode number 11 of Lowering the Barrier, the podcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Matti.
And today we are talking about reverse dieting. I'd say it's a pretty common topic. I don't know if it's necessarily that heated, I don't think anybody gets super up in arms in it the same way people do about like the carnivore diet, for example.
Yeah.
Like there are people who are very polarized on that topic. Just in case somebody's listening to this and is like, what is the carnivore diet? It's what it sounds like. You just eat all meat, and it's really stupid. Really stupid, because you should be eating fiber too. Yeah. I don't think our audience is going to be like, can you please make a podcast about the carnivore diet? But in case there's any interest in that, I suppose we could. But I mean, I could really wrap it up into 10 seconds. It's dumb. Don't do it. Eat your fruits and veggies. Plants are good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to talk about first? Should I do the regular intro, I suppose? Yeah. Let's do the intro.
Yeah.
Okay. If you would like to support us, you can check out the A-Team, which is my group training program. It comes with a 7-day free trial, 4 workouts per week. You could check out Forward Forever. The next cycle registration opens on March 24th, and we begin on April 1st. And if you want a non-monetary way to support us, we appreciate that equally. Not equally, but we do still appreciate we do still appreciate it. You could follow us on Instagram. For me, it's at AlexTimmyFitness.
And my Instagram is at Meals with Matti.
You could subscribe, like, share, do whatever you got to do. Give us a 5-star rating. And we really appreciate it when you're listening if you screenshot and share on your Instagram story and tag us. You may have noticed that we missed a week.
We did.
First week since the start of the podcast, which this is only the 11th episode. So it's not like we were on like a 2-year streak or anything like that. It was a 2.5 month streak, but we were very consistent.
We were consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. We missed a week. And the reason for that was because I went to Las Vegas for a fitness and nutrition coaching conference. It was called
Real Coaching Summit.
Thank you. Real Coaches Summit. And it was good. Yeah, it was good. I stirred up a little bit of drama, not like intentionally. That was not my goal, but so let me first say that every speaker there was phenomenal except for one. I really enjoyed all the speeches I went to. I didn't get to make it to every single one, but I would say I went to probably 85% of them. I think I missed 2. But one of them on day 1, I was so excited about, and it was about menopause. Now, most of my audience, probably 75, 80% women, and most of them are, like, I would say not most. I mean, yeah, most. The majority are probably in like the 30, 40, 50 age range, which I know 30 is a little bit earlier than menopause happens for most people. Mm-hmm. But like 40, 50, I think a lot of women are starting to think about that or potentially even experience that. So I was really excited for that speech. And then within minutes, I mean, I texted you and I was just like, whoa, this is brutal. And it just kept getting worse with how much misinformation there was. And so I started just writing down every single thing. I took a few pictures of slides, took a few videos, and I called Matti after and I was like, there were so many coaches in there, young coaches, who were asking questions. They were very engaged. They were taking notes. And I felt that I should make a post, one, because this was like common misinformation that I've heard a lot. It wasn't just like specific to this one person. It's stuff that I've heard a lot, and I've never made a post kind of debunking all these things, largely because there have never been that many misinformation, like just wrong claims in such a small, tight window. In a 1-hour time frame, it was just thing after thing after thing after thing after thing. And so I posted a few of it on my close friend story, which is for coaches only. If you're a coach, just send me an emoji or just say like, hey, I'm a coach. Can I be added to your close friend story? And then I posted about it on my public story, just saying, because originally I had posted like her thing. I was like really excited for this. And I tagged her, and I've chosen not to name her, by the way. I don't like that super targeted.
Right.
I'm more focused on the information rather than the specific person. And so I went back to the hotel room with my list of notes, and I called Matti, and I said, like, should I make a post about this? I felt like I should, because again, there were so many young coaches there that didn't know better. And I was hoping like maybe they'll see my post or something like that if I tag like Las Vegas and I tag like the hashtag, because I didn't want it to, like, I don't know. I don't want to go around with friggin' pamphlets and being like, this person's spreading misinformation. This person, it's like, how could I reach these people without I don't know, stepping
Sure.
on too many toes. Well, turns out I smashed some toes. So that post did exceptionally well. And I think the reason it did so well is because other people in the industry are sick of hearing bullshit like that. They're just tired of it. And I mentioned, what is the, you know what? I'm just going to say it. I mentioned on my story, like, I am curious what the host, what the vetting process was like. The host was not happy with me, to say the least. I don't want to say all of what was said between us. He approached me, we hashed it out, shook hands, he invited me to lunch. I thought it was all good. He said that, nope, I can't say what he said because he told me that I have to delete comments about what he said and I have to delete a story, which I did because it's his event. But so I don't really know what I can and can't say. And so because of that, I have a hard time endorsing this conference because he's telling me to delete stuff that was posted in support of him. And I just don't think I totally agree with some of the I don't not that I don't totally agree. I firmly don't agree with some of the things that he mentioned to me in private. Again, that I don't think that I can say on this medium or really any medium. Quick edit. The reason that I can't say anything isn't because I signed a contract or he paid me money or anything like that. It's really just because I think he will get upset with me if I do say anything that was said in our private conversation. So that's really the crux of it. It's not, there's nothing legally binding. I don't care enough to have him harass me about things that he told me or whatever. So, yeah, that's it. So it's kind of a bummer. I think that for most coaches, this is an overall good conference to go to. It's just that I personally won't be promoting it because of the conversation that me and the host had. He has tried to say that because of my post, which was correcting misinformation from one speaker, that I will be costing him money. And I just think that's grossly overstating the amount of reach and influence that I personally have when he has about triple my following. And there were speakers there, by the way, there were speakers there with hundreds of thousands of followers that introduced themselves to me and were saying thank you for my post. But, that's neither here nor there. All this to say that, yeah, I won't be attending in the future. Again, not because I thought it was a bad event. I don't. Not because the speakers weren't great. They were, all except for one. Not because I don't agree with the host mission. I do. I think, like, day one, he said that one of the goals of this conference, like the major goal of this conference, was to cut through the BS and the misinformation at conferences, or that is in the industry. And so I don't know, just with the conversation that him and I had personally, you're just not going to see me there, and you're not going to see me promoting at that conference. But again, I love the speakers there. I met Austin Curran. I've looked up him for so long. I met Alyssa Olenek, looked up for so long. They both followed me on Instagram, which was just like a huge deal because when you get a follower like that, it's like, it almost feels like, wow, I've made it. Like somebody I've looked up to for years finally follows you. And it's like, oh my God. So had a conversation with both of them, Austin in person and then Alyssa via Instagram, because we just met in the elevator very briefly. And then like she reached out to me after the fact. So yeah, really, really cool. Huge fan of both of them. And then I got to meet, with other people, Dr. Alan Bacon. I don't know, so many other people. Mike Dola, finally got to meet him in person, which was great because he's been like a friend of mine. Derek Stanley, got to meet him, which was great because I've, followed him for a while now too because of Mike. They're close personal friends. So anyways, just a really good experience overall, kind of dampened by the fact that I was like borderline being harassed to make a positive post about the event, which I just didn't, by guess who. Yeah. So I just didn't feel that comfortable. I don't know. Anything else you think I should say here? You were getting like basically a firsthand account of the whole thing because I was texting you and calling you constantly. Like, what's the right thing to do here? What is ethically a good call? And I feel like I made all the right moves.
Yeah.
In terms of like doing my best to, I don't know, do like what feels ethical.
Right. And I think it's also important to say, I mean, people can go and see the post specifically where you're like debunking or, whatever you want to call it. But I also think it's important to say, like, it wasn't just a little bit of misinformation where there could be some discussion about it was like harmful
Harmful. It was
information.
harmful. Yeah.
Yeah. And that I think is a really important distinction because I don't know. I feel a lot of sympathy and a lot of I, distaste for the industry when misinformation is presented in a way that preys on people's emotions and their like struggles. And I wasn't at the conference, but a lot of what was shared very much did that.
Yes. And it was
And
shared as fact. It wasn't shared as like, this is
right.
what works for my clients. It was shared as absolute fact. So
Yeah.
you can see my post. It was made on, what day would that have been?
The 11th?
March 12th. Yes, March 12th, because it was the morning of March 12th. And I shared all my studies and stuff like that, like everything that I had to pull. It took me a few hours to make because it's just like, if you swing at somebody, you cannot miss. If you try to debunk misinformation, you need to be correct. So I just had to pull every single study to like debunk every single point that was necessary. And anyway, so yeah, we're gonna gloss on past that, but I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got over 1,000 likes, which is a lot for one of my posts. Got hundreds of new followers, over 100 messages, because I put up a poll like, hey, should I make this post? And over 100 people not just voted in the poll, like maybe 500, 800, something like that votes, but over 100 messages of people saying, please do this. So it's like, okay, you ask, I'll answer. All right, moving on. How are you feeling with pregnancy?
Good. Yeah. Yeah. We're
22, 23 weeks in today?
Yeah. 23 weeks today, which is crazy. It's kind of funny. I mean, if you're watching this, you can't like see, of course, but the bump has certainly come in,
it's growing quite a bit.
Which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Very cute.
But yeah, we're doing really well. I don't really have anything, no crazy updates. I feel a lot of the kicks. Alex has not yet felt kicks. We're just now starting to be able to feel them
like on the outside.
On the outside. Yeah.
So I haven't gotten like the right timing yet, but I'll
it's coming though.
I'll share an update. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just starting to buy some things. Like we bought the crib.
Yeah.
Gotta get that, put together, start setting up the nursery and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. It's all kind of happening quick, but it's good.
And then let's see, what else did I want to talk about? We saw Dune 2 recently.
Yeah.
That
amazing.
was really good.
Amazing.
Very, very good.
Yeah.
And even better than the movie was the popcorn.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Always so good.
That was really, really good. I did fall asleep in Dune 2 for about 15 minutes. And I'm gonna chalk that up mostly to pregnancy.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good movie. It was long. Great. I mean, it was long, like 2 hours, 40 minutes, something like that.
It was so good. Yeah. So even with me falling asleep, I highly recommend it.
I'd give it like an 8.75.
Yeah. I think this is the general consensus, but Dune 2 I did prefer over Dune 1 even, which doesn't always happen. Typically like the first is
I think you wouldn't have enjoyed Dune 1 nearly as much if I didn't explain everything to you, because I watched it 2 days or 3 days before you did. And so being able to just like kind of give you a rundown of like the different houses and like the, anytime you get into a new story, a new,
the world building can be intense to learn right away.
Yeah, it's like Game of Thrones. The whole first season was kind of a blur because it's like, wait, there's that family, that family, that family, that family. There's so many storylines going on trying to be built. But then once you kind of get in the swing of it, it's like, oh man, this is really good.
Yeah.
That's the same way with like any movie, any book, like any new series, any new, whatever it is. Okay, ready to get into it?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So, like I said, today we are talking about reverse dieting. And this is, let's just start with, what is reverse dieting? I want you, because you did your prep. Tell me what reverse dieting is.
Yeah. So let me first say this, and Alex, feel free to jump in at any time.
Sure.
I have a hard time wrapping my head around reverse dieting, not because I don't understand like what it is. So basically it's like incrementally increasing calories, especially if you're primarily, you hear about it if you've been cutting for a while and you're trying to work your way back up to maintenance, or figuring out what your maintenance could be, and you're doing these small increments over time, and you're trying to like, I guess the sentiment is that you're trying to increase your expenditure, and you're trying to avoid greater fat gain that you normally see when you kind of swing out of a deficit. And then sometimes I have a hard time wrapping my head around like, the use of it.
Yeah. So let me just summarize that. So what is reverse dieting? Yeah, at the end of a fat loss phase, a person might do a reverse diet. You know what? I'm doing a bad job of explaining it. What is reverse dieting? Reverse dieting is an incremental increase from fat loss calories, your cut calories back up to maintenance. And so instead of just jumping right back to maintenance or a surplus, you incrementally increase your calories, maybe 50, 25, 50, or 100 per week for a number of weeks until you get to your expected maintenance. So, what is the point of reverse dieting? Because we've already talked about like what is it and how do you do it.
Yeah.
So, what is the point of it? The idea here, and I think it really started in like bodybuilding days.
Yeah. That's
At
what I've
the
seen it kind of pointed to.
at the end of a show when bodybuilders are super super lean, they've been fighting, against hunger. They want to because when you're doing bodybuilding, the amount of body fat you have needs to
Right.
be at a minimum. And
Right.
so you have to worry about that show, but you also have to worry about the next show. And so a lot of people, bodybuilders specifically, they want to recover. They want to get to a point where their hormones aren't in the shitter. They want to get to a point where they aren't starving, but they want to do that without with adding as little body fat as possible. Now they do have
Yeah.
to add a little bit of body fat to get back to a healthy position and start being able to put on lean mass again because if you're too lean, it is worse for muscle growth. So a lot of bodybuilders would use this as like, all right, maybe they're at, let's just say like 1600 calories or 2000 calories, something like that, and they need to like incrementally increase it. They will go maybe 2050. Let's say we're starting at 2000,
Sure.
2050, 2100, 2150, 2200. My problem with this is you're just spending more time in a deficit. Let's say your maintenance calories are like 2500 or something like that, like give or take, and you're going from 2000 to 2500 and you're doing it 50 calories, you're spending another 2.5 months in a deficit.
Right.
And if you want to recover, if you want to get back to a healthy point where you can actually start adding muscle and prepping for your next bodybuilding competition, you want to get back to a healthy point as soon as possible. Spending more time in a deficit, if you're done with the cut, be done with the cut.
Right.
By doing a reverse diet, all you're doing is, like I said, one, extending your time in a fat loss phase, but two, you are just going to continue getting leaner.
Yeah.
You're just doing it less aggressively.
Right.
You're
You're just
just
changing the
reducing the
rate.
size of your deficit. Yeah, the
Right.
rate of your weight loss. So I don't really, and so there's kind of this pushback, maybe not pushback, but the sentiment here is that like, why would you do it? Because there's this like thought that if I reverse diet, I boost my metabolism, which let's just like change those words to not be so like clickbaity.
Sure.
It is I am increasing my energy expenditure. That's the same thing. That's the thought at least. But you would do that because of metabolic adaptation, which we'll talk about in just a second. You're going to do that whether you jump back to maintenance or you do it very, very slowly. But I would argue that you would do it much faster if you jump back to maintenance. There would
Right.
be a much faster change in that metabolic adaptation.
Yeah. Similarly, my other, and this is the big thing that I have a hard time wrapping my head around. If you are talking about a 50-calorie increase, that's a rounding error. Like
That's a rounding error.
You would have to be so meticulous with your calorie tracking
Yeah.
to actually say like, oh, 50 extra calories. Like that is such a small amount of added food. And when you are in a deficit or any type of dieting, 50 calories is not going to make or break whether you're in a
No.
deficit or, you're just like, I don't know.
Splitting hairs.
Yeah, like
you're really
you're really
hairs.
not going to hit exactly your target every single day. Like there's always going to be days you're a little bit above or a little bit below because you're looking at averages.
I do wonder if coaches use this, like who are big proponents of reverse dieting. I want to assume that they just don't know that reverse dieting is like borderline, I'm going to say pointless. But
Yeah.
I do wonder if there are people because there are people who follow me and I've been very vocal about reverse dieting. I've made posts about it. I've made stories about it. I know they've seen it because they like the post, but they still recommend reverse dieting, even still.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder if those people are just using it, one, as a sales tactic, like they're just in it for the money, or two, they just want to, and similarly, do they want to increase like the lifespan of working with a person? Like they either sell a reverse dieting guide, they sell a reverse dieting program, they reverse a service, or they just want to increase the lifespan that they are working with the client. Because if,
Mhm.
hey, if we're extending our work together from going from cut to maintenance, if it's just like, boom, here's your maintenance calories, we'll probably have to adjust for the first few weeks based on like, what your weight is looking like and how you're feeling. Or, hey, we have this 10-week block ahead of us. It's like,
Right.
oh, this coach is doing a lot more work for me because he or she is planning out this whole thing. But yeah, I'm
It's
here to
his,
tell you guys, like, again, I just don't know. I don't know what the
right.
coaches, if they don't know, and
That's
I think they
a
should know better. I mean, I don't want to say I think they should know better, but if they follow me and they still do it, I am kind of like,
yeah. That's really similar. I don't see this sentiment shared too often, but I have seen coaches who say like, "Oh, if you do nutrition coaching, change your clients' targets by 20,
yeah,
30, 40, 50,
ridiculous,
just really small numbers of clients
ridiculous,
because they think like, "Oh, your clients are going to think like you're paying more attention,
right?
like you're making these tiny little adjustments."
Yeah, and if
That's
you're,
marketing at best.
yes, seriously, marketing at best, and being, I don't want to be like too mean about it, but it's just like
Sure.
you're missing the forest for the trees here. Like
Yeah.
we're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. If you're a coach, I would really recommend giving your clients a calorie range, plus minus 50, plus minus
Mhm.
100. Plus minus 100 is what I work with. So if you're like, hey, your fat loss calories are 1600, don't make your clients hit 1600 on the mark,
Right.
please. Like, it's just too much micromanagement from your clients. They're gonna fret about it. And just go, okay, 1500 to 1700, let's work within that range. And you can do
Mhm.
like some calorie cycling, lower calories on some days, higher calories on other days. But like, if you just give them ranges and anywhere in that is an A plus, they are going to be a lot more adherent and a lot more consistent, and that's what gets results.
Yeah. Kind of while we're on this topic, I feel like this is a great time to plug from, again, I did my research this
Yep.
time.
Yep.
I came prepared.
Yep.
But from the Macrofactor article, I don't have the title of it in front of me,
It's
but
it's the title of the Macrofactor article is reverse dieting hype versus evidence. It'll be linked in the show notes.
yeah, by Eric Trexler. It is a beast of an article,
Yep.
but very, very, very good. And I think that he had a really great like summary kind of. There's a section on it that's like illusions or whatever, and he pulls out like three different like illusions
Yeah,
of
illusions of like why reverse dieting, like why you
yes.
think it works.
Yes, and I think that this is a really good summary and it hits on a lot of the points that I have like struggled to wrap my head around. So I kind of condensed some of it, but bear with me. He says people have a tendency to underestimate their habitual energy intake. Even registered dietitians with extensive training and expertise in nutrition routinely underestimate their energy intake by over 20% on average. For people without such relevant training and expertise, it's not uncommon to see calorie intake underreported by an average of 47%, while physical activity is overreported by an average of 51%. To be clear, misreporting is not necessarily indicative of dishonesty. Tracking this stuff can be very hard, especially if you are new to it, don't have sufficient guidance or tools, all of that. Reverse dieting necessarily insists on shockingly consistent and detailed tracking. If the big change this week is adding 10 grams of carbs to your diet, which is what, 40 calories, anything short of, is calorie? No.
What, 40 calories?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
4 calories per
Yeah.
gram per carb. Yeah.
Anything short of unsustainably meticulous and precise tracking habits would lead to your entire reverse dieting experiment getting wiped out by rounding error. And their perception of a boosted metabolic rate is a consequence of removing the tracking error that has previously caused them to underestimate their calorie intake. With this in mind, one potential illusion fueling the reverse dieting hype is that people are comparing current, meticulously tracked intakes with memories of less precisely tracked intakes in the past, which means that they are no longer underestimating their dietary intake to the same degree that they once were.
Yeah. So let me just summarize that really
Yes.
quick. So basically, what Eric is saying here, through the words of Matti, or vice versa.
Yeah, hopefully I did an okay job.
Yeah. I mean, you were reading it. So,
Sure.
yeah. So basically, what Eric or Matti are saying, depending on who you're, attributing this to, let's say Eric,
Yeah.
is the reason that, or the illusion of the reason that reverse dieting works is because we are making these very small changes. 10 grams of carbs added, which would be
Mhm.
about 40 calories. And so people are like very meticulous, like, crap, okay, 10 grams added, 10 grams of carbs. I need to hit that on the money. And so people are being super meticulous
Mhm.
with their tracking. Now, in a study, and I actually have the study, which is funny, on my
Yeah.
study references, I have this like Google sheet full of a bunch of studies where I summarize it. And anyway, so registered dietitians, there was a study, they underestimated their intake by about 20% on average. And then there was a study on, I think it was 16 non-obese individuals, not that that super matters, but 16 individuals, and they underreported their calorie intake by an average of 47% and overreported their physical activity by 51%. And both of those will also be linked in the show notes. So if
Mhm.
you're curious, go ahead and take a look. But basically saying that one of the air quote reasons that reverse dieting quote works, I'm doing air quotes here,
Right.
read my words in italicized,
Yeah.
but the reason it may work is because people are just being more meticulous than they've ever been before. Whereas
Yes.
before they may have tracked, let's say 1600 calories when really it was 2000. Now they're tracking 1600 calories and it's actually 1600
Yeah.
calories. Anytime somebody tells you something like, I'm eating 1200 calories and I can't lose weight. No, you're not. That's a
Yeah.
tough reality, and it's the hardest thing as a coach to just tell somebody. Like, you can I'm not gonna say you can't, but if you don't want to make an enemy out of a client, probably don't tell them like, hey, you're not tracking what you think you track.
Right.
That is still a conversation you have to have with them. You need to kind of show them the light, but you need to do it in a very, hey, I'm on your team, I'm on your
Yes.
side,
Very
we're going
neutral.
through this together. Here's the reality. You're
Yeah.
not tracking as accurately as you think you are. And then kind of give them some ideas, kind of just ask questions. And, listener, I know probably 90% of the listeners are not coaches. Maybe
Mhm.
10% are, roughly. I don't have the data to back that up. Maybe 80% are coaches. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably not. There's not that many, coaches in general compared to people. But yeah, even if you're just like a person and you felt like, oh, I can't lose weight, but I'm eating such low calorie, there's like a few things that you're probably missing. Are you tracking your weekends? Are you tracking your alcohol? Are you
Mhm.
tracking like legit tracking, like, okay, you get pizza. Are you just tracking it as like random entry pizza? That's
Right.
125 calories a slice, which would be way, way underestimating it. Or are you tracking it as like the best possible? Now, obviously there aren't always nutrition labels or
Yep.
nutrition facts on websites or menus, but you still have to do your best. And if you're eating out, I would overestimate all the time, because
Definitely.
that restaurant is not trying to make a low calorie meal. They are
No.
trying to make a delicious meal, and that often means adding a lot of fats to increase the flavor, the mouthfeel, etc. So I also don't love the phrase or the word mouthfeel, but I don't know, it just feels weird to say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of more the reality is you're not, it's, yeah. So I like that illusion that Eric added there.
Yeah. And that's
So
not to say that like people aren't doing their best. It's just
yeah,
kind of the reality of like tracking is really hard,
I
especially if
mean,
you're like
if you're new
very
to
new
it,
to it.
it's just like, yeah, oh, I'm supposed to use a food scale. Oh, I didn't.
Right. They're
I
just things
can't.
that you miss
Yeah,
if you're brand new.
yeah. So I would say, make sure you're weighing out like every single thing with a food scale. Sauces, especially, are very calorie dense. If you are using a spray cooking oil,
Mhm.
it's not 0 calories, despite what it says.
Right.
It's just a rounding thing that the FDA allows them to get away with. It says 0 calories because they round to the nearest five if it's under 100
Mhm.
calories, and then 10 if it's 100 calories plus. And so they'll do like a fifth of 1 second
Yeah.
spray is like 2 calories, but they can round down to zero.
Mhm.
So it's just, most people aren't doing it. It's like,
Yeah.
shh,
Right. And even if they like you're also just not timing it.
you're
You're
not
not
timing
you're
it.
not counting it in
No.
your mind, you know?
Anytime I add spray oil, even if it's like a very minimal amount, I'll add 25 or 50 calories,
Yeah.
because in a deficit, I would rather overestimate every single thing I eat and guarantee that I am in a deficit, rather
Sure.
than like, oh man, I don't know what's going on. I'm just
Yeah.
spinning my wheels. I'm in a hamster wheel. I can't lose weight. My metabolism is broken. My body hates me. It must be the hormones. Like, this is all shit that I've heard time and time and time and time again. And it's just, ugh. I get it though. It's like, I get it. If you don't
Yeah.
have the answers, you almost want something. I was talking to Mike Dola, and he was on this Facebook group. We were sitting at the conference, and somebody mentioned like on a Facebook post, like, I eat so healthy, but I can't lose weight. And he asked the question, how many calories is healthy?
Mm, mm-hmm.
And it's like, just because you are eating air quote healthy does not mean that you are in a calorie deficit.
Right.
You could be in a calorie surplus and still eat healthy. Like,
Yeah. This is kind of like a side tangent, kind of going off of that. But like when you walk down the grocery store aisles and you see like high protein or like
oh yeah,
all of those,
it's a
like,
bunch of shit.
yeah, like clean,
Yeah.
like marketing tactics. If you look, I mean, if you look at the calories on them, like a granola bar might still be 220 calories.
Right.
And I'm not saying like you can't have a 220 calorie granola bar,
No.
but
But if you're watching your energy intake and you're trying to get into a fat loss phase, like
yeah,
you're trying to lose weight, then you need to be hyper aware
right.
of the calories that you're taking
Yeah.
in.
It's just those like buzzwords
Yeah.
that people are using, thinking like, oh, clean, that must be lower calorie. That's not how that works, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, moving on really quick. So, the point or the idea behind reverse dieting is to stoke your metabolism so that you can increase the amount of calories you eat while still either maintaining weight or potentially make like your next fat loss phase even easier because now you're burning more calories. And so if you cut, like let's say I'm eating 2000 calories and I move it up 2050, 2100, 2150, et cetera, get all the way up to 2500. Let's say I'm still maintaining weight. Okay, if I cut back from 2500 back to 2000 where I was maintaining weight, now since I just cut 500 calories, I should be in a deficit, right? Wrong. Because of metabolic adaptation. In a 1999 study from Levine and colleagues, 16 people were overfed above maintenance, so they were in a calorie surplus, by 1,000 calories per day. It says per week, but I meant per day for 8 weeks. The math on this won't be perfect, but let's just say they should have gained about roughly 16 pounds. And I'm just doing that about 3,500 calories per pound. That is the average between both body fat and muscle. But anyway, so they should have gained about roughly 16 pounds, very roughly. But metabolic adaptation exists, and it exists to varying degrees within people. Like, you will have a different degree of metabolic adaptation than I will. And I'll explain metabolic adaptation in just a moment. But let me just say, so they should have gained roughly 16 pounds. The smallest weight gain after 8 weeks of eating in a 1,000 calorie surplus per day was 0.79 pounds. That is nothing.
Yeah.
And the largest was 9.3 pounds. So let me say, not a single person gained I'm going to say expected
Right.
16 pounds. It was quite a bit lower than that. And so the reason here is metabolic adaptation. Now, I've said that phrase quite a bit, but what is it? So let's just interchange metabolism with total daily energy expenditure, or energy expenditure, the amount of energy you use every single day. Now, your metabolism or your energy expenditure is made up of 4 parts. First is your basal metabolic rate. That's the amount of energy it takes to keep you alive. If we were laying in a bed, very still, not doing anything, boom, that's it, basal metabolic rate, also sometimes called resting metabolic rate. The next is the thermic effect of food. That is the amount of calories it needed to digest and process food. And then there are the next 2 parts are both exercise activity thermogenesis. One is One is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and the other is exercise activity thermogenesis. So EAT, exercise activity thermogenesis, is the amount of calories you burn from planned exercise, and the NEAT, is the amount of calories or energy you burn from anything that is not planned exercise. So maybe moving my hands around, pacing around the house, going around the grocery store, tapping my foot, whistling, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, anything like that. So what mostly happens when we eat more food is some people, I think pretty much everybody will have a varying degree of metabolic adaptation, but some people will increase their energy expenditure largely through non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, when they eat more food.
Mhm.
I recognize this a lot myself. When I eat a lot more food, I am buzzing. Like when I'm in a bulk, I am buzzing around. And
Yes.
I use Macrofactor, use code Alex for a 2-week free trial, and it tells me my energy expenditure over time. And so if we looked at my chart, you would see that when I'm in a bulk, you can see my energy expenditure just skyrockets. And then when I'm in a cut, it absolutely plummets. And so I am somebody who experiences a high degree of metabolic adaptation. Now, somebody who feels that they put on weight very easily, they may experience a lower degree of metabolic adaptation. They may eat let's say in a 1,000 calorie surplus, and maybe their energy expenditure only increases by 200 or
Mhm.
300, where mine might increase by 700 or 800.
Right.
And this is just a genetic component. This is not something that's like, you can always force yourself to move more, but
Yeah.
the whole thing here is it is subconscious. And so that is something that the degree of metabolic adaptation, I'm not going to say it's 100% genetic because I don't know if I have the data to like firmly say that, but I will say it is very largely genetic. There could be some kind of like psychological component where, I don't know, that comes from your family, your surroundings, your environment. I'm not sure about that, but it is largely genetic. I can't say 100% genetic, but yeah, very interesting. So, knowing that this metabolic adaptation exists when we increase the amount of calories that we eat, that is kind of where this reverse dieting, it's thought to be beneficial because you are, stoking the fire. You're increasing the amount of food you eat. However, going from fat loss to maintenance, whether we spend 10 weeks doing that or we spend one day doing that, we just jump right away,
Mhm.
we are going to experience the same degree of metabolic adaptation. There has never been a study that shows that reverse dieting is superior to just jumping back to maintenance. To the best of my knowledge, there's actually no study that supports reverse dieting in a positive way. I don't know if there's, I don't know. Anyway, Eric Drexler actually wrote a study on reverse dieting.
Mm.
I would say that he's the guy. He spent the better part of his life researching this stuff. So the macro factor article, that's the place I would go.
Yeah.
I mean, that if you ever want to learn about reverse dieting, that is the place I would go. So next question is like, it probably I think a lot of listeners at this point are like, okay, well, it doesn't really make much sense. If I'm just spending more time in a cut, if I'm done with the cut, why would I do a reverse diet when it's not going to be better for my energy expenditure? It's not going to
Mhm.
like increase or decrease the amount of metabolic adaptation I get. It's just extending the amount of time in a fat loss phase. And if I'm done, I want to be done.
Right.
So then why would you do it? So I think there are two scenarios. One, maybe you are somebody who is hesitant to put on body fat. And if you
Mhm.
are hesitant to put on body fat, then maybe you want to go at this a little bit slower so that, you don't put on too much weight. Now, I do want to say that if you're super afraid of the scale, like, man, you got to work on that. Like
Yeah.
anytime you increase the amount of calories you're eating, you're likely increasing the amount of food volume you're eating, not
Mhm.
necessarily, but likely. And when you eat more food, specifically with food volume, you are going to weigh more. You're holding onto more glycogen, you're holding onto more water, and you're holding onto more stomach content. If you eat 1 pound of food, yes, you are going to be 1 pound heavier,
Mhm.
at least in the short term.
Right.
That's the way it goes. The
Yeah.
food has to go somewhere. Your body is a container for the food you just ate. So these transient changes in your body weight don't really tell much. So you have to really extend the timeline of, how you're looking at your body weight. Now, the other way I would see that you could do this, and this is something that I actually wrote about, I think 3 years ago in a blog article, and this is the way that I've used it with clients, is I push them back to 90 or 100% of expected maintenance. So if I expect their maintenance to be 2,000 calories, we'll jump to like 1,900, 2,000.
Mhm.
Because if somebody loses weight, their baseline energy expenditure will go down, like
Right.
their basal metabolic rate, because every pound of body fat and muscle is metabolically active, meaning it requires energy to upkeep.
Mhm.
So, let's say they were cutting at like 1,600 calories. I jump them and I expect their maintenance to be at 2,000. Let's say I move them back up to like 1,900 or 2,000 calories. There will be that jump in weight.
Mhm.
Why? Because they're eating more food.
Right.
Again, they're eating more food. But then it's the next 2-3 weeks that we look at, and are they maintaining their weight there?
Mhm.
If they are, let's try pumping it up by 100 calories. Let's push them up to 2,100, for example.
Mhm.
Are they maintaining their weight? Man, maybe we try a little more. Maybe we try 2,200. And you always have to see how they feel. If somebody's like, I don't like eating that much food,
Right.
then okay, we can dial that back. But your maintenance calories are not a target. They are not, again, I'm using 2,000 a lot. So it's not like 2,000 is like
Yeah.
the magic number for maintenance. Of course it's not, but I'm just using 2,000 because it's a nice round, easy number. 2,000 calories, it's not like if you eat 50 calories less or 50 calories more, you will either be in a deficit or be in a surplus.
Mhm.
Your maintenance calories are a range. because we don't burn the same amount of calories every single day. Every time we eat food, it's just an estimate. The amount of calories, whether even if we have a food scale, it's rounded.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do our best, but because of metabolic adaptation, we do, well, largely because of metabolic adaptation, we do have maintenance as this like large range, maybe small, maybe large, depending on the person. But I might maintain calories somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2,600 to 3,000 per day. Probably not 3,000 at this point because I'm not 170s anymore, but like 2,500 to like 2,900 is roughly where I maintain my weight. And I can be anywhere in there and I'm going to mostly maintain my weight. So yeah, for somebody who, wants to eat a little bit more, maintain their same weight, it is feasible that they increase their calories a little bit, and they could do that incrementally and just kind of watch their weight, watch their trends and see,
Right.
hey, could I maintain weight at a higher, a little more calories? Might feel pretty good. I might just enjoy that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the use case where I would personally see it. Now, should we call that reverse dieting? I don't really
Right.
know,
Sure.
because reverse dieting does have this implication of like, okay, you did a diet, which that's already kind of a nebulous term because a diet is like dietary pattern. A diet is just like the way
It's
somebody
just what
eats.
you eat. Yeah.
Exactly. So when we use diet, it's like, I don't know, sort of interchangeable. I don't know, I'm really going on a tangent here, but yeah, reverse dieting, it's kind of this idea that like you're moving from a cut to maintenance. So if you are just trying to push your maintenance up, I don't know. I think the Macrofactor article called it dynamic maintenance, which I think is a much more apt term.
Right.
So the reason I personally don't recommend it is for all the reasons stated prior. I think you're splitting hairs. I think it is extending the amount of time. Not I think. It is extending the amount of time you're in a fat loss phase. If you're done with the fat loss phase, just get out, move back to maintenance. When you are in a fat loss phase, if you are in a calorie deficit, you are reducing your rate of muscle growth. So if you are happy with the leanness that you're at and you jump up by 50 calories, you're just going to get leaner and you're just going to continue with that slower rate of muscle growth. So if you're done, be done. There's no reason to extend it. So I personally don't recommend it. I'm going to say basically in any situation, except if you do one of the two ways that I said prior.
Sure. I also think that one of the perks of, coming out of a deficit is you get to kind of ease up on some of the tracking.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like you like don't calorie track anymore, but like it's not the same degree of meticulous tracking.
Yeah.
And in order to accurately do a reverse diet, you are meticulously tracking still.
If you're adding 50 calories, you have to be spot on.
Yeah. And I think that a perk of getting out of a calorie deficit is sometimes the mental aspect of,
for sure,
like, let me not think about food the same way.
Right.
And I think you're just extending that mental load.
Let's say you just did an 8 to 12 week cut and now you want to spend another 10 weeks being hyper meticulous.
Yeah.
And like we do have to be accurate with our calorie tracking. Like let's say you want to move back into a surplus. Yeah, sure. You still have to be accurate. Maintenance, I don't think you have to be as accurate because it is such a large range. You can kind of be a little bit more.
I don't want to be the person to say like,
stop.
Ease up.
Right.
So I don't want to say that, but like there is a degree of it's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
I 100% agree. All right. We have some questions from IG. So from Instagram. So prior to this episode, I announced this episode and then I asked, what questions do you have about this? And I got a bunch of questions and a lot of them were pretty similar. So we have, 8 questions that let's just get into. And I think these should be relatively rapid fire because I think we answer a lot of these in the podcast. So how to know if I should start a cut or reverse diet, what metrics? So anytime we're talking about should you enter a cut, maintenance, or a surplus or, a bulk, interchangeable terms, all you have to do is look in the mirror. That's all you have to do. Take off your shirt, take off your pants, look in the mirror. Are you happy with what you see? That's a question for another day. But do you want to gain more muscle or do you want to lose more body fat?
Yeah.
So if you're asking if I should start a cut or a reverse diet, I think a reverse diet is something that you would start at the end of a cut. You wouldn't like do, again, not that I recommend it, but you wouldn't. All right, let's play devil's advocate. Maybe this person is asking, all right, I'm at maintenance right now.
Mm-hmm.
Should I reverse diet in the sense that they want to increase calories incrementally? So maybe they're at 2,000. Let's go 2,050, 2,100, 2,150, kind of like I do with my clients, and then cut And now I'm able to cut at a higher calorie target, right? That's kind of the
Sure.
thought process. I'm assuming that's the thought process of a lot of people. No, the metabolic adaptation happens no matter what.
Yeah.
So if you were maintaining at 2000 and then you're maintaining at 2200, you go back to 2000, you're still going to maintain at that number. It's not like, unless you put on just like an incredible amount of muscle to be able to make that differentiation. But this is like pounds and pounds and pounds of muscle. So it wouldn't be, yeah. So, but how do you know if you should start like one of these phases? This is a question I get all the time. And ultimately, I would just say, look in the mirror. If you would be okay with adding 5 pounds of body fat and you want to accelerate your rate of muscle growth, go for a surplus, go for a bulk, be casual about it, and go listen to our how to optimize muscle growth body episode. I think it was episode 3. I think.
Yeah.
If you are like, nope, I want to lose some body fat, I want to get leaner, I want to tone up, then yes, you need to be in a calorie deficit. So, but I would get this reverse diet out of here. I wouldn't bother with it. There's nothing that is inherently going to make a cut easier. It is not going to, it's just, yeah. So wouldn't really worry about that. Is a reverse diet necessary? No, just jump back to maintenance. What's the benefit? Slightly lower odds that you overshoot your maintenance because you are going at it at such an incremental approach. But again, I think if you're super, super worried about this, I would still just go like 80, 90% of the way to maintenance so that you just decrease that timeline and you decrease because maybe the listeners, a lot of the listeners haven't experienced the hell that is being very lean.
Yeah.
I have, and you've seen it firsthand.
Yeah. It's brutal.
It's brutal. It is hunger to the point of I was crying in bed some nights because I was in so much pain from hunger. And the reason I was doing it wasn't just like I just wanted to look like a god.
Funsies.
Yeah, it was if I would have been able to hit 148.8 pounds and I would have been able to do that on competition day, I would have been the strongest in Michigan in my weight class. Yeah. And that was an accolade that seemed very tempting at the time. I got down to 150.8 pounds. I tried doing water cuts and the pain of hunger was too much. And that was September of 2022, I think. Yeah. And there was just one day I woke up and I was like kind of like flirting with the idea of like shutting it down so many times. And there was one day I hit my breaking point. I just couldn't do it anymore. But my lifts I was still feeling strong. My libido was absolutely in the trash. I was lethargic. I felt like if I went on a WALK, can't say it because the dogs, that I felt like I was going to pass out. Yeah. Like every quarter mile. Like I couldn't walk a quarter mile without feeling really dizzy.
It was really bad.
It was ugly. And so if you are, that's where a lot of bodybuilders are when they're stage lean. If you're doing a reverse diet, dude, you're just extending the amount of time that you're in that hell. And like, yes, it will get better, but if it's 50 calories better, that is so negligibly better that like just jump back to maintenance. If you want to do a recovery diet, if you want to get back to a healthy weight, you need to put body fat on, and you're not going to do that at maintenance. You're going to do that at a surplus because maintenance by definition means you maintain. You're going to maintain your weight. You're not going to put weight back on. And so one of the things that I did was I knew I needed to recover. I needed to put body fat back on. I ate 5.7, this is probably overkill, but I ate 5.7 thousand calories the day that the cut ended. And I decided to end the cut at like 2 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah, we had spent the whole morning.
So the first half of the day was super lean meals, egg whites, cauliflower rice, the whole shebang. And then the second half of the day was madness. Yeah. We got popcorn. We went to see a movie. We got pizza. We got Taco Bell. It was crazy. And my stomach was so distended because it was so full that it hurt. I couldn't sleep laying down because I felt like vomit was just going to like ooze out of my throat. It was so bad. Yeah. And my stomach, it was hurting so bad. And the crazy part is, despite how distended my stomach was, I was still hungry. And that hunger was, I couldn't get rid of it no matter what for like 2-3 weeks. Yeah. It was a while. It was vicious. And then I noticed that I started holding more fat in my face for like months afterward. But anyway, so I would really recommend, and so this next question actually goes hand in hand in it. Somebody asked, how/why do bodybuilders use it to get back to a healthy weight post-competition? If you want to get back to a healthy body weight post-competition, you can't do a reverse diet. You need to get into a surplus and you need to put body fat back on. I'm not a bodybuilding coach. Please don't ask me for, to coach you in bodybuilding, but I am pretty good at body composition and I am pretty good at understanding nutrition and hypertrophy and everything that a bodybuilder needs to do outside of like stage day. So I would say, we do know that being too lean, like sub 10% body fat for men, roughly, and sub 18% body fat for women, roughly, is worse for muscle growth.
Mhm.
And so, like, if bodybuilders, they want to have muscle.
Right.
You got to have a good amount of muscle to be a bodybuilder and to win shows. And so, if you want to get back to your like off season and you want to start putting on muscle, you need to get back to a healthy point
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. So much of like the pros of reverse dieting, I think, just stem from this like fear of gaining body fat.
Yeah.
But like in a lot of these ultra lean instances, gaining body fat is not the enemy.
Well, and it's not
like,
the enemy, and it's like you need to do it to get your health
yeah,
back.
yeah.
Yes.
So I think like people get so in the weeds of like, oh, I can't gain more body. Like,
dude, you need to put on more body fat. Yeah.
And if you're not ultra lean, then I think we're really in the weeds here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if you're super, no offense, average physique, and you're just like trying to like lean out a little bit, and then you're thinking about doing a reverse diet, like you are way overthinking this.
Yeah.
Way overthinking this.
Yeah.
You don't need to do it. Next question. If you suspect someone has been chronically dieting for years and they have metabolically adapted to lower calories, do you reverse slowly or go back to perceived maintenance right away? Go back to perceived maintenance right away. If someone has been eating in a calorie deficit and experiences more extreme forms of metabolic adaptation, i.e. loss of menstrual cycle, could they reverse diet to correct the energy imbalance? Would reverse dieting be different in this type of situation? So no, if somebody's lost their period, then they are either too lean or they've been in deficit for too long. Those usually go hand in hand. Get back to maintenance or potentially even a surplus for a little while to get your period back. And that might take months for that to happen. What is the best method to use in implementing a reverse diet? I have heard you can jump straight to maintenance or increase calories bi-weekly. How much do you increase and how does this transfer to macro proportions? So best method to use in implementing a reverse diet would be to not do a reverse diet. But yeah, jumping straight to maintenance and then increasing calories like weekly or bi-weekly, I think that's a totally fair approach to do.
Yeah.
But just know that, like, again, anytime you increase your calories, your weight is going to spike up. And I think a lot of people who are kind of allured to reverse dieting are like, oh, my weight won't spike up much or as much. It will in the long run.
Right.
It's just going to happen a little bit slower. And so when you jump between these phases, when you jump from a cut to maintenance or even a surplus, or especially a surplus, there will be a big shift in your weight. It's not body fat. It's just stomach content, glycogen, and water. We need to stop worrying about these transient changes in body weight because they don't tell us the whole picture. The number on the scale could never tell you your body composition.
Mm-hmm.
Like me at 165 pounds versus somebody who's 165 pounds, same height, but doesn't lift, we are going to look so drastically different that the 165 pound person might look like a friggin' blob, next to me. I don't look like a blob. It's weird, but true. All right, last question. With weight fluctuations, how often do you adjust your calories to find the correct maintenance amount? Sometimes I weigh more for half the week, even though I'm in a deficit. So how can you know you're at the correct amount? This is where you got to zoom out and look at weekly averages. And you got to compare, like, all right, let's say so anytime you weigh yourself, do it in the morning, before eating or drinking anything, after using the bathroom, with minimal clothing on. That will give you the most accurate weight. Now, maybe the night before you ate a little bit more broccoli. Maybe you ate a little bit more carbohydrates. You're holding on to a little bit more water. Maybe you had some more sodium, which holds on to more water. Maybe you lifted a lot, and so you have a degree of inflammation. And so you're just, again, holding on to more water. So your weight might be up, but then the next day you might kind of flush that water and you might be down. And the next day you're up, and the next day you're down, and the next day you're up, and the next day you're down. So we have to look at these weekly averages. So weigh yourself with, those parameters. Do that 3 to 7 times a week. I recommend just doing it every day. Just make a habit of it. Then look at that average and compare it to the next week and compare it to the next week. Anytime you move between phases, between a cut to maintenance, maintenance to a bulk, cut to bulk, bulk to cut, whatever it is, basically disregard the first week. The first week, there's going to be such a shift in weight that, like, I would disregard that entirely and look at the next 2 to 3 weeks. If you're trying to make decisions on a week to week to week to week basis, you need to zoom out one step further. If you're doing it on a day-to-day basis where you look down, you're 165. The next day you look down, you're 167. You're like, oh shit, I'm in the biggest surplus ever. I must have eaten about 7,000 calories over my maintenance yesterday to gain this much. Clearly, I must have eaten 2 Little Caesars pizzas, 3, I guess, because maintenance calories. Like, you guys need to just chill the fuck out.
Yeah. In addition to like the number on the scale, I think you should also contextualize the week you've had. Like, was there a day where you were like, "Oh, I'm going out. I know I'm not going to hit my deficit calories." So I think that should also kind of play a role when you're like looking at like, "Oh, it's been 2 weeks. I want to make some adjustments." How accurate were those 2 weeks?
Right.
Like, was it a 2 weeks of, like really consistent tracking and really consistent hitting those goals? Or did you have a couple days where, you didn't? And I'm not saying that like you can't have those days, but I think it's important to kind of contextualize the numbers you're seeing too.
Yeah. And somebody did ask how do you like, what do you increase when increasing calories? Do you increase? And just like, so there was a study, I unfortunately don't have it pulled up. I'll see if I will find it and then I'll add it to the show notes. No, I'm not going to promise that just in case I get distracted or something. But there was a study that looked at when we equate, there have been plenty of studies on this. When we equate calories and protein, high carb, low fat versus high fat, low carb diets have the exact same outcomes in terms of, or I should say very similar outcomes in terms of body composition and health markers. So as long as if you want to add it all, when you're increasing calories, if you want to add it from carbs, from fats, do your thing. I have never once worried about my carb or fat target.
Mm-hmm.
Just hit your protein target, fill in the rest of your calories with carbs and fats, you're golden.
Mm-hmm.
Try to hit your fiber target, hit your protein target, hit your calories within a range of plus minus 100, and you are golden. It's that simple. And if you do need help with this, download MacroFactor, use code Alex for a 2-week free trial. Their article on reverse dieting is the best article I have ever seen on reverse dieting. So again, it'll be in the show notes. The other 3 studies that we mentioned will be in the show notes. And this is the end of the episode. So thank you so much for listening to another episode of Lowering the Barrier. I am Alex.
And I'm Matti.
You can follow us at Alex Timmy Fitness.
Or at Meals with Matti.
You can support us with the A-Team, Forward Forever. Hit a 5-star rating, like, share, subscribe, screenshot, and share on your Instagram story, and tag us. And reminder, Forward Forever, the next cycle opens up on March 24th. We begin on April 1st, and this is the last cycle at the current pricing. We will be increasing the pricing from $200 for the first 6 weeks, $250 for 6 weeks. And then also people who continue after this cycle, it is just $35 per month, but continuation will be going up to $50 a month after this cycle. So if you want to get in at the lowest rate that it will ever be, ever again, this is the cycle to join. We are making a whole lot of changes very soon, and we're so excited to show them to you. Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening. Take care.